We've got another interesting story to bring you now. A recent briefing has raised serious eyebrows, OK? Because apparently British foreign aid has been directed towards affluent regions in upper middle-income countries. So areas that are wealthier than parts of the United Kingdom itself. And that report has come from the Institute of Economic Affairs.
It has indeed. So it's titled Robin Hood in Reverse and essentially highlights instances where the UK taxpayer has funded projects in prosperous cities such as Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, Mexico City. And, of course, it is sparking a debate over whether foreign aid is being misallocated, whether it's time to reassess the criteria for all of this aid. Are we neglecting our own communities to pay for things that essentially don't need to be paid for by us?
Well, or go to places that are wealthier than us, given that we've just borrowed 3.1 billion quid more than we were expected to, and our taxes are all about to go up by the sound of things. Joining us now to discuss this is Communications Officer at the IEA, it's Harrison Griffiths. Harrison, thank you very, very much. Can you just explain to us exactly what's going on here, then? So we've been giving money to places that are actually wealthier than parts of the UK.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Patrick. I mean, there are some pretty staggering findings in this paper. You've already mentioned Beijing, which is, as a whole region, richer than 4 of the regions of the UK. And it goes all the way up to Cawdos City in China, which is richer than 69 regions. It's got a GDP per capita comparable to Swansea. So this is some pretty bizarre upward redistribution of wealth from our government.
I mean, that sounds quite incredible. So regions where the GDP is the same as Swansea. That's not exactly what people would think, where people would think that their aid money would be going. But I'm looking at some of the examples you have in your report. Projects include an all-female traditional Chinese opera in Shanghai, a rural crafts exhibition in Shenzhen, and a temporary cycle lane in Mexico City. Explain, if you can, Harrison,
why we're doing this.
It does seem bizarre on its face, but there is a pretty simple explanation for it, really. So imagine that you're a bureaucrat of some kind, a civil servant or a decision maker, and you've been given a pot of money that needs to be spent because we commit every year to spending 0.5 to 0.7% of our GDP on foreign aid. And you're based there, you've got a pot of money to spend, and you're in a country like, say, Mexico, where some regions are incredibly deprived and definitely places where perhaps we should be spending foreign aid. And also, you know, places like Mexico City, which are pretty affluent. Again, one of those places that's partly richer than the rest of the UK. Are you going to base yourself and are you going to base your operations in a place where the living standards are better, where the connections are better, or are you likely to go out there and go into some of, you know, the planet's, you know,
so
most
it's because our aid workers. It's because our aid workers prefer living and working and setting up projects in the more affluent areas.
Fantastic.
Seriously.
Brilliant.
Well, yes, in a lot of ways. So the law that governs this, the 2002 International Development Aid Act, basically says that ministers have an awful lot of discretion about where this money goes. And that means that when you have these decision makers on the ground, they are going to follow those incentives. It's not necessarily, you know, people being evil or lazy. It's just where life is kind of easier and more convenient. And so that's where a lot of money ends up going. We don't expect that our money's...
It makes sense when you put it like that, Harrison. I'm sorry, Harrison. We'll have to speak again because we have to leave it there. But great to speak to you. Harrison Griffiths, Communications Officer at the IEA.
We're going to be hearing a lot more about this story. We're going to be hearing a lot more about it. We've just had that double whammy of us borrowing within 1 month of a Labour government £3.1 billion more than expected, taxes going up, pensioners suffering, etc., so that the public sector can receive whopping great big pay rises. And then this story lands about the idea that you, wonderful people watching and listening to this, have funded an all-female traditional Chinese opera in Shanghai.
Fancy a trip? We may as well make the most of it.
Absolutely not. It sounds awful. Well, they wouldn't let me in, would they?
We paid for it. So.
Oh, maybe the opera's all female, not the audience. I don't know. Either way, I don't care. Why can't that money go to Barnsley? Do you believe in aliens? Well, an American military veteran and intelligence agent has claimed that the USA has been recovering alien technology from UFO crash sites. Yes, so Luis Elizondo says that he worked at the Pentagon and that he knows that they have recovered material that is not from this Earth. He resigned after believing his government wasn't taking the threat of UFOs seriously. Well, joining us now is the presenter of That UFO podcast, Andrew McGrillen. Andrew, what's going on here then? So have they been covering up alien material from us?
Good afternoon. Now, I don't think the claims that are being made in Luis Elizondo's book, Imminent, are new, but I think what we have to pay attention to is the seniority of, one, Luis Elizondo, and two, the people who recruited him, and indeed the people he worked for, which was the Department of Defense and the Pentagon.
Right, so basically he was high up. He would have been in a position to know, is what you're saying. Oh.
Oh, no.
I think the aliens might have taken us off air. I think if you didn't believe in... Oh, you're back. Sorry, we had some interference there, presumably from the Pentagon, but carry on. So do you think that he was in a position to know about this?
Yeah, he would have been. He would have been speaking to the individuals who were taking part in these investigations. You're showing some of those clips just now that potential incursions by objects controlled by a non-human intelligence, potentially. We're not saying alien necessarily, but something non-human, interacting on a daily basis with the US military, modern day, but also going back to the 1940s.
Right. And why would they be covering this up from us, do you think? And can I also ask, you know, what is...
Seems a bit far-fetched to me, Andrew. I'm a sceptic.
Yeah, very fair. Multiple reasons. When people say sceptical, I think as a species, we're relatively new in terms of what we do in space. But right now, we've got a robot on Mars that drives about and has a little helicopter drone that every so often comes up, flies about away 10 feet from it to collect samples and comes back. Now, a species a couple of hundred years down the line from us would have far better technology than that. So who's to say what we're encountering aren't just really advanced probes from something else that's just slightly ahead of us in the technological scale? I don't think that's too far stretch of the imagination.
And the implication with what this particular chap was saying is that actually the US government has known about this for a very, very long time, and they are actively keeping that from us. Why would they be doing that? Why wouldn't they just say... Because when you do see things like what we just saw there, which was made public, the New York Times did a big expose on all of this, and actually, you know, the world didn't end. We weren't all outside fighting each other for scraps of food and burning down the nearest Lidl, were we? We just thought, oh, that's quite cool.
Yeah, I think about 4 years ago, we were close to fighting each other for scraps of toilet roll. So I think there are things potentially that can kick off, and the public has a lot of other things that I think they deem more pressing, which I completely understand. People have got bills to pay. You're reporting previously on those foreign aid developments. It's a topic that for many isn't treated seriously, but I think now we have to look at it and maybe take a step back, look at the people coming out now, talking about UFOs and thinking, is there something to this that we've maybe been overlooking?
Yeah, if these people are coming out and they are more and more senior, and it's less likely that you can say, oh, you've got a tinfoil hat on and you live somewhere in, you know, rural Texas, and you've got, you know, and you just kind of are a bit thick,
a little van
basically.
With
you know, then actually, then you have to kind of, you know, put some credibility to it. Andrew, look, thank you very much. In case you couldn't tell, I could obviously talk to you about this for hours.